Bow your heads if there's so much cold. John 14 teaches us, let not your hearts be troubled, let them be afraid. As many times before we come to you with heavy and weary hearts, we ask you, Lord, for guidance and protection for our children. With everything that's working against them, we ask your mercy on them. We ask for wisdom and guidance for their parents, teachers, and those in a position to make decisions and changes on their behalf. Our hearts are battered and broken, Lord. We pray for strength, peace, comfort, and healing for us all, especially those you know who need it the most. In your name we pray, amen.
And reorganization of the board 7.1 election of officers. President, I need a motion. Take over as president. Second.
Mr. Robert. Let me amend it, please.
Congratulations, Mr. Mraz. We switch now? Like, let's do it. Four. Officership clerk. Next up, we have election of officers for clerk. Motion from Mayor Davis to be clerk. Second. Call for the vote.
You should amend it.
Next, we have the appointment of the superintendent as secretary to the board of trustees. Second. Call for vote. Next up, we have selection of the vote passes. Next up, we have the selection of the day, time, and location of the regular meeting.
Moved.
Moved by Mr. Davis, seconded by Mr. Barnes.
If you see attached, there's a schedule of meetings for 2022, continuing on the third Thursday of the month at 7 o'clock, with the exception of the December meeting at 5:30.
She's going over this.
Questions? Any questions?
Any questions? Yes.
Call
Call for the vote. And it passed. 7.5, resolution 21-2207, certification of signatures. Authorized signatures to approve payroll signature authorization list. Moved by Mr. Davis, seconded by Mr. Barnes. Call for the vote. Passes. 7.6, delegation of authority. Mr. Davis, seconded by Mr. O'Banion.
This is the recommendation to appoint the Director of Student Services Intervention and Alternative Ed, Holly Favelli, as hearing officer responsible for fact-finding hearings and make recommendations to the board on student discipline matters and authority for issuing subpoenas.
Call for the vote. And it passes. 8.1, public hearing regarding trustee area map plans presented by Brian Martin of AALRR.
Good evening, Board President Mraz, congratulations, board members, Superintendent Report. We are back for the second public hearing on the proposed or draft scenarios for the trustee areas. Part of the process for the district to establish by trustee area voting. So we are here for input from the board and the community with regard to the draft map scenarios that have been prepared by your consultant demographer, who is actually here tonight, Scott Newell. So Newell, is that correct pronunciation? Okay. So I won't go through the same thing that I did last meeting, where we went through the slides of the PowerPoint presentation. I thought it would be useful for the board to possibly hear from Scott tonight and to provide you any information or answer any questions that you might have with any of the draft maps. The scenarios, which we mentioned last time, are scenario 1, scenario 2A, and scenario 3A that would be considered by the board for selection at a later date. So, I don't know, Scott, you want to come up and do your magic?
You have to, that, I don't, but
They're on the agenda item under the public hearing.
I can get it.
Thanks for having me. As Brian said, since we didn't make any revisions at the last hearing, really, I guess the primary questions I have tonight from the group, first, if there's any questions on the process itself, the considerations that need to go into it, upon looking at the 3 proposed scenarios over the last month. If there's any further revisions that you might want to make, or if you're leaning towards one, or if you are leaning towards one, that maybe there's some further tweaks you might want to make to align and have us run a scenario and see what that looks like. Kind of looking for that feedback right now, or you can simply say, scenario 1 or 2A or 3A, we think best fits our considerations. And just to remind everybody, when drawing these maps to go to a by trustee area, the 2 requirements that we must do, we must look at the total population and try to balance out as much as possible within a 10% threshold. So what that means is the range, you can't have one area that exceeds the other by a range of 10%. And so all the scenarios that you have in front of you now are within that 10% threshold. And then the next thing we look at is how the demographics spread within those boundaries is drawn to comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act, which looks at protected classes. In this case, protected classes means minority voters. And we have a pretty balanced spread within those 3 scenarios too. So now the other considerations are really up to you guys. And those are things that are allowable to look at, where the first 2 were required. And so when looking at these scenarios, the considerations you can consider are compact and contiguous spaces. So having areas that are nice lines or they're brought together nicely, you don't have weird fingers that stretch into a little piece of population. So you want those nice compact kind of spaces, which these do. Respect community of interest as much as possible. And so that's a piece where us as demographers, we look at the demographics, we draw the lines, we meet the requirements, but we don't know your community nearly as well as you do. And so that's where you may say, this intersection here, we should move it over a block, or we should move this down, or whatever it might be. And so that's certainly something to consider. And you might say some of the scenarios meet that very well at the moment. Next one is man-made features like roads or geological features like mountains or valleys or fields or things like that. You can draw boundaries around there. Respect incumbency, possible. And I do believe that, at least as far as that's concerned, the 3 scenarios right now do respect that. So you don't have, under these scenarios, a situation where you have 2 trustees within one drawn voting area. Now, obviously, moving forward over time, these decisions transcend the board members. So you get the opportunity to do this once every 10 years or with every census. And so they do meet that requirement today, but certainly as you're moving forward, this will be drawn at least for the next 10 years, at which time when the new census data comes out, you then see if your demographic change is still in compliance, and then you can make tweaks at that time. And so, yeah, the last little piece that you can look at is school sites or fields or other things like that. And so that's, I guess that's where we're at today. And as Brian said, we didn't hear much feedback last time. So really, if you've had time to contemplate anything, or again, just for the record too, if there's ones that you guys are maybe leaning towards more than the other, that feedback's good as well. And I guess as far as the rest of the process is concerned too, this is really just an informational meeting. And so then after the new year, at least in January, come back and actually make a decision at that time. So have it as an action item to adopt a recommended scenario. And then that goes to the county committee on school district organization, and they'll have a public hearing and say, you approve the scenario that you drafted, and then you would use those starting next November. So that first part needs to occur before March. So you still have the opportunity to make those tweaks over the next 2 months.
So who's trustee number 1? That would be Maria. Maria? Number,
Yeah, 2A or 3A.
oh, I'm sorry.
Could you guys go through the trustees and name them all,
3A.
just so we can,
Are we looking at 3A,
we're looking at, let's start off with 2A,
2A?
and let's go off on page, we've got trustee number 1, 2, and just go through them.
So I can identify at least up on
So one is Maria,
maps represent what trustee,
2 to me.
and you are on
I would be
2A
3.
there. And you want to scroll down just a tad so we can see, scroll just a tiny bit there. So under this scenario here, trustee area number 1, as you can see, up here is that whole section in yellow. And so zoomed in, we're trying to keep that kind of focused on each of these, but it spans all the way down. Number 2 is the green, and so if you scroll up, and what is not reflected on this one just because of the size of it, I believe presently trustee number 4 is occupied up on top, which you can't see because of the map.
2A is not right. Yeah, the mine showed trustee 1 is green.
Yeah.
2A is not right.
Existing trustees versus under this scenario. So you, yeah, the last.
You got 2 is green on 2, 2 is blue on this on 2A. Because 2 is me.
Your key is off.
Yes, your key is off.
Yeah, I think what happened was that the
4 should be green.
the indications on the map of the trustees doesn't correspond to the legend. It was just basically numbering the trustee areas, so apologize, it's a little confusing. But
So I can follow based on current makeup. So number 1 is in the yellow. Number 2 is in the cyan color, turquoise. Number 3 is in the orange, right in town, and it spans.
We don't have the same. No, we don't have the same one.
This is where we would probably like to see this where the map and the key match. Because if we're confused as a board, our public's gonna be confused. So we need to get these to match
So
up.
this, I pulled up your website that's in front.
So this scenario here, Pasha, if we can go down,
That's in the presentation, right? It should match this.
our color key there, what we have on our PCs up here, our map does not match our color keys. If there's confusion amongst the board, there's gonna be confusion amongst the public, and that's what we do not want.
Yep, you're
We
absolutely
want to
right.
be clear and concise with the information that we're putting out. This is not gonna work for us.
Yep, you're
So
absolutely
if we
right.
can get these maps redrawn where they match, we'd like the key to match the map.
I totally agree.
Anybody want to add to that, or?
And we have to have the names too.
It would, because the more information we have, the better it is for the public.
Even the 2A in the presentation doesn't match the 2A in the drop down.
We want these clear. Then if you can name us on there, then again, we want to be clear, concise, transparent to the public. If there's confusion up here, we're going to have some confusion out there as well.
definitely.
So we
Understood.
want it's the map to match the key, and we'd like names. This way, when we're making a vote or we're making a choice, we can do that, and we can present that to the public with no confusion.
Yeah, we'll get that corrected.
Anybody want to add to that?
No, but I really apologize for that.
So we'll want another hearing.
We can do one more, that's not a problem. Now, the one thing that we can garner some feedback now, because that one is definitely a logistical thing we can be cleaned up. If you go to the data and the spread of just the variation between the different trustee areas and then the citizen voting age population within the different trustees, were there any observations within that data that stood out to you? So under scenario 1, you have a variance of 8.6, which means that your trustee area with the fewest number of residents was number 7 at 1,538. And the largest was, trustee number 4 at 4%, which is 1,677. And so that's how that variance comes up. Your other 2 scenarios that were revised took that variance down to 4.3 and then 5.1 respectively. So the population was balanced a little more in those 2 scenarios amongst the different trustee areas. And then from those 2 scenarios in 2A and then 3A, when you look at the different spread of demographics of citizen voting age population within those. Under 2A, I do believe that in 4 trustee areas, we have minority majorities that have been achieved. And then we have 4 as well in scenario 2A, although it's a different trustee.
Honestly, I think we're gonna want these redone,
Okay.
and
We'll have another hearing.
they're not matching. I'm looking at them, they're not matching. We'd like them redone. Get the names up there, and then we can, they'll be clear here, clear up there, clear up here.
Yes.
So if we can get these redone, I think it's gonna be much better, because
All right, we will definitely do that.
we're presenting on stuff that's just, we're looking at it, it's not matching.
Not a problem, sir.
So we'll do another hearing. We have to adopt by March, so we'll.
You do, yeah, you do.
So we'll
have
do one
time.
more hearing in January and then adoption in February.
So we want the map to match the key, and we want names, correct? Anybody want to add to that, or those are the 3 key things?
That sounds good.
we're looking for?
Okay, thank you. We'll get that done for you. Apologies.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you, you too.
Don't have it all over.
9.1, fiscal cash status update presented by Melissa Kapinski, Assistant Superintendent in Business Services.
We're actually gonna let Ms. Kolpinski report later in the board meeting, so we'll skip to the next one.
All right. 9.2, Superintendent Report.
All right, we are in December. Seems like half the year sailed by. Here we are. So December superintendent report, looking at enrollment. So we'll continue to track enrollment each month. We're pretty close to what we ended the year last year. And then there's a breakdown by school site, what our enrollment looks like, and we'll continue to monitor. COVID district report. So total confirmed cases from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, 129, that's staff and students in total. And then we're in the 4,000s for quarantine, give or take. So we have quite a bit of students who have been quarantined, whether they're sent home isolation, they have COVID, or they need to stay home because of illness. Our testing center, we have administered 1,510 tests. So that's our test, that's way higher than what we anticipated. Great job to Mr. Von Allman and his staff for getting this service out to our community. We're open Tuesday all day at the PDC for community and Thursday from 2 to 4. So definitely very receptive. COVID news. Yesterday, we did a COVID test distribution for the holidays. This is not a test that we can use for students or staff to come back this week to school if they're on quarantine or a modified quarantine. This is specifically for students and families to help safely navigate COVID during the holidays. And we're excited to announce we handed out a total of 5,480 tests yesterday. We do have a new mask mandate from December 15th to January 15th, regardless of vaccination status. There is a mask mandate indoors for everyone. This impacts our indoor athletic events, offices, and staff meetings where normally, if there was no students present, if you're vaccinated, masks could come off. In this situation now, from December 15th to January 15th, masks will be required at all times.
Mrs. Grijalva, does that impact any outdoor activities? There's been some talk out there.
No, not at this time.
Does not impact. So outdoor activities are business as usual, just indoor activities,
Yes.
mask
When
mandate.
students were present anyways, masks were required. So it really just impacts our adult meetings such as this.
Thank you.
Attendance data. So we will continue to monitor. Normally in a typical year, we do see a drop in the winter months because of flu and because illnesses. holidays, those types of things. November, we ended with a 93% attendance rate. So our goal is 97. And we're not meeting that goal. However, we are meeting the chronic absenteeism percentage. We want this, the lower the better. 15.4% or below, and we're at 13.9%. So our staff's doing a really good job trying to get our targeting our students with chronic absenteeism. Suspension data. So looking at suspensions and expulsions per month. And then we also continue to monitor our major incident breakdown. Altercations continue to be our highest suspension or removal from, not necessarily suspension, but removal from classrooms at 46. Social emotional slide, Mr. Mendez is going to be reporting out from Ed Services later in the meeting, so I'm not going to steal his thunder. But a couple positives. Our DPHS virtual enterprise has ranked in the top 42 in the state, and they're going to be moving to the state competition in January. So we're excited about that. And then Mr. Mendez and the curriculum specialists are doing great work at each site. Really focusing on our district goals and alignment throughout the district, not just site specific, to help us all be on the same page. Student activities is my favorite slide, to see the pictures. I need a bigger screen though, Ajay. Upper left-hand corner, student activities adventure risk challenge at the high school. So this program takes students on hikes, on trails, different activities on the weekends, and they've reported that this is the highest numbers we've had in years. So that was great. Below that, kudos to Mr. Rodriguez and the band program. We brought back our winter band concert. So there's a couple students excited to perform. Below that, to ground our students, increase in community service, is our 6th graders won the canned food drive at Bryant Middle School. In the middle is our GC students, leadership students who participated in the parade, the Christmas parade downtown. And below that, their bonanza with our wood shop. They sold items and it was a huge success. Upper right-hand corner and also printed for our board members is the first newspaper for our Marks Elementary, and they're doing that as an enrichment project during the And then, I don't know if you've ever been on an elementary campus when Santa gets there, but if you are Santa, be careful, because the students love seeing him, and they were Christmas caroling, and Santa decided to join in on the fun and help them learn their songs. District news and upcoming events. So phase 2, update on the DPE cell tower. We're going to be working on this winter break. Thank you, Pajay. Estimated completion date, we're hoping February. We continue to struggle with parts coming in and shipping, as we all know, the shipping struggles. January 3rd through 7th, teachers professional development opportunity. We have 66% of teachers who have committed to participating in a professional development that week, just improving practices in the classroom. District-wide HVAC installation. So we've been talking about having presenters come on updating our HVAC systems. That will start December 20th. Thank you, Matt and Melissa, for the work you guys have done to get that started. And then a new practice. So our district Dpol shout-outs have been a hit, and a great addition, I think, to acknowledging students and staff going above and beyond. So if you would like to request a district shout out, if you can contact Dottie, so we can continue to acknowledge when our students and staff go above and beyond. So we're going to extend that. That's fun. And then to continue that, we're going to recap the district shout outs at board meetings. So GC students, Mrs. Crivelli and Mr. McCullough, and their transportation. Food services was struggling a little bit a couple weeks ago. A little bit is an understatement. You see Rhonda. And we didn't have servers for some of our sites. And so Mrs. Crivelli calls and says, hey, I have students that have already been trained. Can they come and support our district? And Matt figured out a way to get transportation for our students, and they helped out for about a week, and it was great to see. DPE student Andrew Josiah Munoz, he's a student that's been struggling with fighting brain cancer, and instead of just, let's see, that's a hard one. So he and his family did a Valley Children's toy drive, and they've got quite a bit of toys. There's a picture of him in front of Valley Children's with mountains of toys to give to the same hospital that is treating him. And then DPHS students, Spanish teachers, and counselors. We had 11 seniors and 5 juniors earn their syllabi literacy, which is awesome. Any questions? All right, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Grajala. 9.3, report from board members.
Thank you for the service you guys have put in this year.
Mr. Rainbow.
Yeah, just a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and everybody have a great 3 weeks off.
I want to thank everybody for support, especially Dottie and Megan for my year as president. Mr. Moraz, good luck. You got a lot of support out here. Everybody's doing a great job out in the district. Keep working hard. Keeping the best interest of our kids at the forefront, and we'll make it through anything.
Big thanks overall to everybody out there. You guys are working hard. You guys are doing great. I'm enjoying this little newspaper. I know my daughter reports in it. I think it's an awesome thing. Our student having that toy drive, I've done it before. That's an awesome thing. I love seeing that. We've got some great things. Santa out there in the community. I saw it. The Grinch was even out there. You guys are doing a great job. Love it. Thank you guys. Mr. Davis.
I just want to say thank you. I know it's just not been easy at all for any of you. I hope you have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Hope you stay healthy and your family stay healthy, and just love on each other, because time's a liar and a thief, and just hold each other close and enjoy.
Mr. Reyes.
I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a safe and Happy New Year. And also keep your family close.
Nothing.
Grinch.
Someone says ditto.
Heard that.
That's what he meant to say.
9.4, mid-year report, education services.
Good evening, Board of Trustees and team members. Before I begin, I want to formally thank the Board of Trustees for giving me the opportunity to come back home, full circle, and come back home and take on this role and support the district. I'm going to be presenting the improvement plan to increase achievement and success here in Los Palmas. So the approach that we're taking follows an improvement model. And this improvement model, it's very basic, and it's proven to be effective in bringing necessary change and positive change. In this model, you want to determine what is needed, what can be done, how to do this, and ultimately the actions in place to get it done, right? In a very simplistic form. Once it's implemented, the goal is to sustain it all the while continuing to refine. So nothing is ever perfected. You always want to evaluate your practices and always improve on them. So I'm bringing this to this district with my previous practices and really moving forward to having a collective effort for change. So step one, what has been done? When I was finally able to come to Los Palos after battling with my former district to let me leave, I took it upon myself to work and obviously get to know everyone that I didn't know, and then re-know everyone that I had worked with. And do this work is where we created a real thorough evaluation and needs analysis. So by researching practices, by examining what's been done before, what's currently being done now, and what we expect to happen in the future, by reading and revising some of the learning plans to improve some of that success, surveys, interviewing community partners and school partners, teachers, staff, classified and certificated, and garnering that partner feedback, whether it's the community, the school, and increasing collaborations. One of the best ways to change and become more effective is to collaborate and really use everyone at your disposal for the collective change. And then ultimately, everything should be driven by data. Everything that we do should be driven by data. So what does the data tell us? Well, the cumulative data or the state data tells us that we've maintained, here in Los Palos, we've maintained the same level of effectiveness for at least the past 4 years. We've almost flatlined that effectiveness. It's been very, very expected of how we're going to achieve. That's not necessarily good, right? Despite the most recent pandemic year, despite the shifts to distance learning, partial in-person, and then back to full in-person, and now with quarantine, despite all that, our state assessment reflects that there has been no significant change, either as an increase or as a decrease. So with the pandemic and with distance learning and with everything that comes with it, we would have expected to decrease, right, significantly. That has not happened. A significant increase or decrease has to be 3 or more, either +3 or -3. And that has not happened the past 4 years. So that, to me, in a needs analysis, indicates that we have to change structurally, and we have to change in a systemic way. Another piece of data that we take a look at, and this one's incomplete, is our local benchmarks. Our local benchmarks are not summative like the state test. Our local benchmarks are, if you want to think about it, it's about 1/3 of the content, and then we assess the students, and then we assess them on the second third, and then the final third of the standards. And so this is also very crucial, but this is incomplete. I will follow up with the board in future reports with how we are doing with this. But initially, you can see that currently we can say that about 23 or 24% of our students, both in ELA and math, are meeting standards or exceeding standards. And once again, it's a snapshot, but it still gives us the ability to provide a needs analysis. Another piece of data is our English learners, right? And so these numbers are, it's a few numbers. They are significant, and the reason being is because we could make assumptions, right? But we can assume that English learners are a significant group, right? Sometimes it's where in this community, it's a very significant group. So it's an impactful group with regards to achievement. Secondly, we can assume with this data and with previous data points that when a student starts kinder here and finishes his career here, 33% or 1/3 of them will not exit the English learner program. They will continue to not be able to achieve to a point where they exit the EL program. Once again, that's an assumption, right? And the third assumption is that the middle group, the 354 students that are expanding, that needs to be a focus group. That is the group of students that is stuck and needs more focused attention and support with regards to language to get to the next level and ultimately exit the program. Once English learners are able to exit the program, they achieve at or better rate than a typical student. So very crucial point there. Currently, we have 206 students that have been in our district 5 or more years that are still English learner students. So this takes us to step 2, right? All the information that we've gathered, talking to people, researching past practices, has led us to these 4 major goals. And with each of these 4 goals, there's some actions that will be taking place and are actually taking place. Right? I want everyone to keep in mind that our first step this school year is for structural change. We need to align and bring coherence to our practices before we move forward. A good way of thinking about this needs analysis is that right now we are currently playing, if I use a sports analogy, right now we are currently playing with multiple playbooks. Multiple playbooks, and each coordinator or each coach is not on the same page, right? So that produces the same achievement level that's sustained. The only way that we are going to bring the necessary change for our students is to align that and play off of one playbook. One playbook. So that's the whole purpose of this plan, right? We are going to align the practices so that we could get better collectively as a team. We are operating currently in lots of silos or lots of groups. And what we need to do is operate collectively as a district and at each school site to improve our student success. As you can see, the first goal, and it's an overarching goal, is to increase achievement, and there's some actions there that are taking place as we speak. Second goal is to create safe and engaging environments for students. That is very crucial because we all know that the pandemic and the results of the pandemic have really impacted our students' ability to be self-disciplined, to be self-motivated, and to be engaged in anything, let alone school, right? So we are going to improve our practices with providing the support for students through anchor programs, social emotional learning anchor programs that we will all collectively be implementing at each school site, including the high school, because it's never too late to learn about self-discipline, self-regulation, self-control, and then also to have the ability to persevere and work hard towards goals. The third goal you see there is to increase college and career readiness, and our goal is to begin that at the elementary level. It is never too early. Usually that implies secondary, but our goal is to make sure that students know that they are supposed to have readiness at the elementary level leading into middle school and high school. And then finally, we need to dramatically increase the feedback and the input that we receive from parents with regards to these goals, with regards to the achievement and the success that we have for our students. So to meet these goals, right, as I mentioned 3 or 4 times, it has to be collective. It has to be a unified, standardized effort. And so some of the activities that we've taken upon ourselves immediately is to align what is being discussed and what is being collaborated upon at each of our collaborations at each of our schools. So everything is centered around achievement. Everything is centered around data. Secondly, we've increased those collaborations. We've given more release time for staff to collaborate about the goals that I just mentioned and the actions that I just mentioned. We have deliberately, and you see it in the learning plan, we deliberately increased funds to provide support to these collaborations. And as mentioned with the winter session, we are providing the professional development. You can't move forward without having the training, right? Especially with everything that's changing now with education. And then finally, for the year 2 and 3 plan moving forward, we have strategically leveraged the county office of education. I have personally spoken to their lead, and we have their backing for the next 2 or 3 years of full support from 8 coordinators with regards to our educational practices. And the last slide is once again another snapshot. This is a chronological look at what has been done throughout this school year and what will be done. And once again, this is just a snapshot. There are more things to come. There will be more things added throughout the year. This is fluid because with collaborations and touching base with people, they provide more input and we change our practices accordingly. So with that, I will take any questions of the coordinator.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Next up, we have 10.1. Public concerns will be heard by the board at this time. However, they will not be discussed. Policy number 9323 limits individual presentation to 3 minutes. The president may extend the time under certain circumstances. This is the opportunity for members of the public to discuss and focus on issues important to the district's purpose of education. Under board policy at this time may not be used to present derogatory information of a personal nature on any employee. Members of the public who wish to address the board must speak from the podium and identify themselves.
Good evening, my name is Rita Widron. I am one of the teachers here at Marks Elementary. I am a third grade teacher. I'm also the treasurer, secretary treasurer membership chair for our Dpol, our local union. I have my notes on what I was gonna get up and say, and I haven't been, to a meeting that, but you looked at me because I'm gonna talk. Since before COVID, so not just the 2020 when we were shut down, but before that because of personal health issues, personal family health issues as well. So, throughout the pandemic, prior to the pandemic, during the pandemic, during the major part of the pandemic, and now, I can be a testament to the extremes that this pandemic has hit personally, my family. So I can only imagine if what's going on with my family, how that extends to my students and what they're going through and what they've been through. The last year I stayed home, and thankfully we have an awesome district. I cannot complain about our district. Awesome district, extremely awesome support. I was blessed to be able to be working remotely during this time. And during that time, I was working with our group of third graders who were online. And I got to see firsthand from their homes what was going on at home and how the pandemic was hitting them during that time. I also, was in contact with my fellow teachers who were on campus and doing, once they were able to come back to campus and how, they were affected with coming in and, trying to maneuver and juggle everything that was happening. And I commend the district leadership. I commend the district. Just everybody that works here on how well we have been able to manage this pandemic and be able to get through it. Because all of the support that we're getting, we are working and getting through this together. And I appreciate that. I know exactly how much we're working as now I'm talking about teachers, how much we're working as teachers and how much we've had to do in order to continue teaching our little ones or teaching our kiddos and trying to get them through this thing called life, not just education, but life with what's going on. Hearing the information that there was no significant change throughout the pandemic. I mean, that's a good thing for me as a teacher. It's like, okay, yes, we're doing good things. Could we have done better? Maybe. We don't know, because we do what we can with what we have. I enjoy the fact that when we need something, it gets done, and we come together. One of the things that we, as the union, have been seeing is that we're not on the same page as to how we're going to provide the funds for our teachers for their hard work. So I hear a lot of, you're doing well, you're up in the front, the forefront, you're in the battleground, you are in the trenches, but we're not feeling it as appreciated because right now I heard the steps of what's happening. We're going to increase the achievement. We're going to, work on safety and engagement environment. And I'm great goals. But then I heard, this is what we're going to do. And this is how much how much more we're going to do. And I'm tensed again, because I know it's going to fall back on me as a teacher to get our students where they need to be. And that, if I'm just hearing about it, I can imagine the rest of my colleagues the same, because we know things are coming down and more things are going to be added to us. And we feel that we're doing the best that we can with what we have in the situation that we're in. But we are also feeling that we are taking the most brunt of it all, because we are in the trenches and we are the ones that are in the classroom with those students. So when I'm hearing according to the numbers that we have, so thank you for that, because, you know, giving us the information of how we're gonna get there. I attended a bargaining update meeting, and the numbers according to them is, according to the state, California, we're supposed to be spending 55% of our monies on classroom and students, and we're only spending 53% of that money. The other additional 2% would be about $570,000. As a union, we're asking the district to please show that you appreciate the teachers financially by giving us a 4% increase in salary and a 0.5% added to our insurance cost, which is a 4.5%, which is less than the $570,000 of that money. It's about $529,000. So again, we're in the classrooms, we're doing the work. We're gonna get additional things added, some things will be taken away, but we want to see that we are being thanked financially as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Withdrawn. Here's we have an amendment to the agenda. And the amendment would be to drop item 11.6.
Mr. President, I'd like a motion to approve 11.1 by removing 11.6.
Second by Mr. Barnes. Call. Item is passed. Appears we are dropping 11.6. 11.2, contracts and agreement proposals. FEO LLC website subscription. CAMSA agreement renewal.
So 11.1 goes, you're doing everything.
All right.
We need to
Monetary donations to Dos Palace High School, FFA Agricultural Department. Monetary donations to Dos Palace High School Yearbook Department. Warm-ups to Dos Palace High School boys basketball.
Minutes also.
Minutes 11.8, board meeting minutes of 11/18/21, regular board meeting, and December 8th, 21st of 2021, special board meeting.
All the way through 11.15.
State overnight travel, 11.9, Dos Palace High School, HOSA. State leadership at Long Beach, California. 11.10, Dos Palace High School cheer at Rancho Cucamonga, California. 11, Dos Palace High School cheer at Bakersfield, California. 11.12, Dos Palace High School cheer at Las Vegas, Nevada. 11.13, Dos Palace High School softball at Morro Bay, California. 11.14, Dos Palace High School baseball at Morro Bay, California.
And warrants and payroll.
And warrants and payroll, 11.15, warrants and payroll.
I'll make that motion.
Most people still want to. 12.1, 2021, 2022. Or call for the vote.
Jeremy and me, I second. No, just, she's probably putting this in. We'll vote.
After the presentation.
Ms. Gilbinski.
Sorry about that, I didn't know I was up already. Okay, do the presentation, please. We'll start with the fiscal account update since we combined the two. I'm gonna- Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for having me. I also wanted to thank Superintendent Report for filling in for me for the last two board meetings. Two times ago, I had a family emergency, and last time I was at a CBO training, so I paid that you stepped in and read my little narrative, and you did a great job. I saw.
Glad nobody had questions.
I appreciate that. It's a little small to see, but what I wanted to start with for the fiscal cash update was the revenue adjustments for the first interim, because the cash that I've prepared for tonight includes these revenue adjustments, and these are increases in revenue as a result of changes at the first interim. So for the general fund, there was a number of them there, a significant amount in our COVID one-time resources, and then also some adjustments to the child development fund. There was the pre-kinder planning implementation grant, and also some money designated for COVID response for that fund in particular. So moving on to incorporating these revenues into a cash flow. Now, what you see presented does include actuals through the end of November, and then the projection shows estimates for December through June. When we receive $10 million of COVID resources that have been recognized now in this budget, it's not realistic that we'll spend $10 million in revenues by June, right? So I've utilized the accrual column, which is the column right after June, and I've indicated that I estimate we perhaps will not receive all 10 million, but we'll receive 8 million in the next year for the following fiscal year, because the ESSER funds that have been added to our budget at first interim have deadlines that take us through 2023 and 2024. So I've deferred revenues totaling the 8.7 million, and you can follow along total receipts. And then in correspondence to that, if we don't have the revenues, we probably aren't spending all those expenses that correspond with those revenues. We'll spend those also in the 2 out years. So balancing expenses have also been placed in the accrual. So that gives us a better representation of cash and the comings and goings of cash for this current fiscal year. So you can see on line D, the net cash flow. In any given month, we're probably spending more cash than we actually received in that month. But because we have the cash balance, our net cash and our ending cash remains positive going forward through the end of June. And the amount there is at the end of the June. So that's looking still like we're in pretty good shape there. Highlight the COVID funds. I've also provided an update with year-to-date spending for our one-time dollars for COVID. This chart shows each resource, the amount budgeted in 2021 and also 2022, and then expenses year-to-date, the amount remaining in the encumbered column. That's we've earmarked, we've already budgeted for certain things, and purchase orders have been put in place for those things. And then there's the column at the end, which is unallocated funds. That's that 10 million that we anticipate to use throughout the end of this year, next year, and the next fiscal year when the funds expire. Looking at that in chart form, I provided that as well. So now we'll move on to the first interim report. Brings us up to date where we're at with our current cash and spending. But I'm also here to tell you about the first interim. So it's a requirement through AB, Assembly Bill 8200, to report on our financial situation, our financial condition, and determine whether it's positive, qualified, or negative. Positive means we are able to meet our fiscal obligations in the current year and 2 subsequent years. If you recall, the budget was board approved in June, which means it was being developed in May, and a lot has changed since May. So that's why this first interim budget is very significantly different. So we take a look at a few different things called our budget assumptions. The county office puts out a common message, which puts together all the numbers that we increase or decrease things by. The FICMAC calculator is what determines our ongoing funding for our local control funding formula. So that gets an update. And then our LCAP is always in play to determine our actions and services there. And if anything happened historically, that needs to be incorporated. So from the county office common message, we get our COLA. That's one of the significant components of our ongoing funding. What is the COLA, and what's that percentage going to be? For fiscal year 21-22, 5.07%. That's a great COLA. It was actually 2 years worth that they just put into the one fiscal year. So we didn't get any COLA 2021, and they put the 2 into the 21-22 fiscal year. You can see the variance going into fiscal year 22-23 at this time is a negative 2.59%. To bring that COLA down to 2.48%. That's not a very big COLA, but with the California economy doing pretty good, they're already predicting that that should be probably a 5.35% COLA in 22-23. And then back to a 3.5 COLA in 23-24 and a 3% COLA. 24-25. Don't ask me how they know how to figure all that out this many years away, but they are anticipating a couple of good years, even coming back from the pandemic, and then that's going to level out. So that's the prediction. The governor's budget will put those numbers more solidly in place. Those are just predictions at this point. So what are the significant changes to the budget? Well, as I said, it was a long time ago that the budget was developed, and I anticipated that we would maintain the same amount of students. So I had put in our predictions that enrollment would be 2292, and our census report takes a snapshot of where we were the first Wednesday in October. And the first Wednesday in October, when I was developing this report, the estimate was 2278. That report was just certified yesterday, or it's recertified by tomorrow, and the number will be 2273. That's the number that they'll take as our enrollment number for funding purposes. Enrollment continues to change up and down, but that's the number that we'll lock in place. So that's a difference of 14. So we're down 14 because of the hold harmless. We're always funded on the prior year or the current year, and hold harmless kept us in a holding pattern. We're going to catch up with that in 22-23. So we'll realize actually a reduction in ongoing monies from approximately 87, 88. Next year, if we had those students and we had that paid and we had that ADA, those 87 students would be $1.1 million. But we won't have that next year. So we'll realize that difference. That COLA, that funded COLA, will offset that 1.1 million, but it'll probably give us a flat funding model. So you'll see that in the multi-year projections. So I was wondering where did all those kiddos go? And so here's a chart that's a comparison by grade. But if you actually look at the cohort, I have in 2021 is on the left, 21, 22. My headings didn't show up. But if you look, the kindergartens, 146 students, now is 144 students. Like, they kind of sync up. So we just didn't get as many kindergartner kids, and I think then we lost a few in the middle school. That's just me. So I also wanted to share with you the ADA, the funded ADA. So here's where I was just kind of talking about that. So the blue line shows that in 1920, we were funded on the prior year. 2257 was our actual ADA, but we were funded at 2335. That's providing us more funding. so that we have time to bring into alignment our funding with the number of students. So, stay there for just a minute. So then when we were in the hold harmless in 2021, we were funded on prior year. Because that's how that works. And hold harmless started in 2021. And then 21, 22, we're still in hold harmless, so we're still on the prior year. It went down by 3 to the 2254, just due to some of the unduplicated count and some students at the county that we lost, because they revise it annually. So this is where now you can see moving into 23, we'll jump back up to being funded still on prior year, because we don't know how many students we'll have next year. If we have more students next year, that will be good. But if we maintain or have less, which is then the pattern, we'll be funded on our prediction of ABA for this year, which is 2026. One more thing on that slide, Ajay. So the net change, so this is our big chunk of money, right? The local patrol funding formula. So the net change from our prior year is there on the bottom line. You can see there was a positive in 1920. There's a negative 664 in 2021. A huge jump for 21-22. That's because we not only got the 5% COLA, we also got a 15% additional amount in the supplemental concentration grant. So that's an additional 1,084,000 earmarked in unrestricted dollars for personnel that provides services to students. So those dollars will have to be spent on personnel that provide services to our students above and beyond what we've already provided. But then moving into 22-23, we have that flat funding model. If the COLA is higher, that's a good thing. We won't realize that much of a drop there. So moving on, here's the additional revenues, which I shared in the chart. We can move on to the next piece. The same dollars in the categories with pretty colors. Next one. This now is our all of our revenues and depicted by color into their specific category. And I wanted to call attention that 15% increase provides a $932,000 increase to their supplemental concentration grant funds, which is our LCAP. And those are the services that increase and improve services to students. So with all those new revenues, you can't just put revenues in a budget and not have balancing expenses. So to record those revenues, I had to also budget expenses. So $9.1 million has been added for expenses, and the breakdown's on the next slide. All right. Our expenses adjustments include Title I carryover. This is on the next slide, Pajay. Our one-time revenues. And then as these revenues are spent, and we don't spend all of them, that's when we record what we spent and defer the rest of them out to the next year and the year after. So you'll see those adjustments coming up. Next chart is just a comparison from where we were at adopted budget in orange to the budget that for expenses in the first interim budget. Next, I also shared again the COVID funds, just so you have that in the same presentation. And on the next slide, where we're at with spending COVID funds year to date, December 14th. Incorporated the same chart. Next, on the next one. So if you ever were looking through, you didn't have to see both of my reports to get all the information all together. So how does this all put together with multi-year projections? Because that's the question. Can we meet our financial obligations in the current year plus 2 fiscal years after? So at the adopted budget, we had a $3.7 million deficit. And that has been improved to a $35,000 deficit. Why the change? Well, back when we were adopting the budget, the ESSER funds that were 3.3 million, we recorded that revenue and made expenses in this current year for them, and then they changed the reporting of that. So that $3.7 million is really the same dollars that now are budgeted the revenue this year and expenses for those ESSER 2 funds in this current year and the ESSER 3 funds. So moving on to the next slide, you can see that a little bit better, which I should have had up. So you can see on in the white columns, that was our adopted budget fund balance, and we were spending down those ESSER funds that we had to use those up this current year. Now we've recorded the revenue again and corresponding expenditures. So they're still there to spend. They're just now recorded, and it shows that we now have only a $308,000 in the restricted dollars for the first interim budget. Unrestricted does show we have a positive $272,000. That is because that extra 15% currently does not have salaries and benefits budgeted against it yet. But by the end of this year, it will. Otherwise, those funds would have to be earmarked to be spent in another fiscal year. It's gonna get really tricky. They're pulling some real fast ones on us at the CBE. So if we put all of the multi-year projections together, I've presented here where we ended 2021 and the closing of the books, where the adopted budget is, and that $3.7 million deficit. Now move over to the 2021 first interim with the 45-day revised adjustments, same thing. All those things we've talked about all up until this time are now incorporated here, and this is what we'll use moving going forward. And then in fiscal year 22-23, we're spending our COVID dollars, so there's a deficit there. From 23-24, still a significant deficit. The one-time dollars will be spent by the end of that fiscal year. We look at the other funds. I've provided that here, and the kinder implementation grant is there, and their one-time COVID stipend, which is great for preschool. And that would bring us to the end. And I would ask that you approve the first interim report as with positive service. And we'll take any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion? I'll make a motion.
We have the motions. We're ready for calling.
There it is.
Call for the vote. And it passes. We have action items. 12.1, 2021-22, first interim budget report.
There you go.
12.2, educator effectiveness block grant plan. Mr. Mendez.
Good evening once again. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge Mr. Drone's sense of urgency with regards to the work ahead. This is part of it, this plan. There is work ahead for all of us, and we're going to do it collectively. So I want to. Before you is the formal process of considering and approving the educator effectiveness block grant. Last board meeting, we had an opportunity to see the draft, and so this is the final step with your consideration and approval of moving forward with these funds. So as the title mentions, the block grant is for educator effectiveness, to increase educator effectiveness. And so the purpose is professional learning. Professional learning, all the monies associated with this plan is for professional learning of educators to promote equity, quality, and effectiveness. Our intended use with this plan is to continue to implement the district mission, vision, goals, actions, and steps, some of them that were described during the mid-year report. Our apportionment of funds is $635,000. That can only be used once again for professional development purposes, and the monies have to be expended in a 5-year span. So we will continue to use these funds to support new teacher induction. We will continue to provide targeted professional learning with regards to English learners. And we will continue with our plan to provide both winter and then eventually summer professional development opportunities, all around social and emotional learning, lesson design, around our district approved curriculum. We will also, with these monies, develop training on inclusive practices, IEPs, and 504 plans. That's part of our alignment work. And then ultimately, with these monies, we are going to provide training and identify and implement an ethnic studies curriculum and lessons that has to be implemented by the year 25-26 per a new state law. So with that, we are asking the board to consider the plan and to approve it accordingly.
So moved.
Call for the vote. With
Yes,
motion from,
Second.
with motion, Lisa second, correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next up, we have STEM Scopes California Science Curriculum Pilot K through 5.
12.3.
Skip one for us.
I'm sorry. Parsec Education Service Agreement.
I'll make that motion. Second.
Motion by Mr. O'Bannon, seconded by Mr. Barnes.
This is a service agreement through Parsec. We're already working with Parsec, but it's to continue and expand our work with our dashboard to include student engagement and other functions.
Call for the vote. And it passes. Next up, we have 12.4 STEM Scopes California Science Curriculum Pilot K through 5. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mr. O'Bannon, second by Mr. Barnes.
In the first semester, we piloted FOSS K-5, and now we'd like to pilot STEM Scope K-5 for the second semester.
Call for the vote. And it passes. 12.5, the adoption September 2021 policy updates. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Van Wert, seconded by Mr. Barnes.
These are our September 2021 policy updates. The first read came in the November meeting, and now adoption for December.
Any questions? Call for the vote. And it passes. 12.6, 2021-22 Sober Grad Night Support.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Banyan. Second by Mr. Van Wert.
So Sober Grad Parent Group is requesting support to continue to offer a Sober Grad Night for our seniors, and we are I'm recommending approval.
Any questions? Call for the vote. And it passes. 12.7, Terra Verde Energy Asset Management Service Agreement. Motion.
So moved.
Second. Or seconded by Mr. Barnes.
Terra Verde Energy Asset Management Service Agreement. We had a presentation prior to this, but this will help manage our solar panels real time. So they can be fixed real time.
Any questions?
Hey, Matt, that's all up and running, everything's going. When are we gonna be able to tell our savings a month on the first month? Do we have any idea?
So we should see it very soon. We just passed the, I can't think of the word right now, but we just actually finished
Certification.
everything, the
We
agreement.
were just certified.
Yeah. So we should see it the next month.
That's something I'd like to see at the next maybe January, February board meeting, see what, see what that looks like.
As soon as it's available.
So that means all our solar is now up and running? Okay.
Just add to that, their goal is to get on the network so they can see it online.
I was about to say, because I know I can see mine in real time. I don't know, we are huge things. I don't know who would be monitoring it.
The other day with the company in terms of all this stuff. So-
And you guys will be able to monitor what we're producing and our savings, because I know I can do that from my app, and I assume this is just gonna be on a larger scale. Okay. All right. Is there a motion? We did that already?
Yes, so second, Ben.
All right, call for the vote. And it passes. 12.8, Merced County School Board Association Executive Board Member Appointment.
Mr. President, I'd like to appoint yourself, Mr. Moran. Second.
Now I'll go
Call for the vote.
Call for the vote, I guess.
Let me amend it.
Now I know why I got put up here, see? Take one for the team. And it passes.
Congratulations.
I'll find out what that means later. Of course.
You're left.
Thank you, guys. 12.9, McGraw-Hill Wonders Curriculum Professional Development Winter Session.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. O'Brien, you have a second? Second. Or Mr. O'Brien, second. Call for the vote.
So this is in the McGraw Hill Wonders curriculum. We're offering professional development in January, and Wonders will be supporting that session.
Call for the vote. I'm still shocked from the last one. And it passes. Personnel. 13.1. Revised CSEA salary schedule. Motion on this, Chairman.
Yep, so moved.
So moved by Mr. Banyan,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Bonds.
So January 1st, 2022, California's minimum wage will increase to $15 for employers with 26 or more employees. So while final negotiations with CSEA is still pending to comply with the state's minimum wage law salary schedule this is the updated salary schedule to meet those requirements.
Any questions? Call for the vote. And it passes. 13.2, coaches and volunteer coaches.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Bennett, seconded by Mr. Bonds.
We have one recommendation, Garrett Leva to wrestling volunteer at VMS.
Any questions? Call for the vote. And it passes. 13.3, certificated staff.
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Bennett, seconded by Mr. Bonds.
We held interviews and selected candidate for the intervention counselor at George Christian is Chandra Lee. I'd like to welcome her to the team.
Any questions? Call for the vote. And it passes. 13.4, resignations.
Just like to thank this person for their service and support for our district.
Thank you. All right, call for the vote. Written reports.
Just naming me.
14.1, food services, Rhonda Sullivan. 14.2, health services, Priscilla Whitaker. 14.3, maintenance, operations, and transportation, Matthew McCullough. 14.4, preschool, Virginia Franco. 14.5, special education, Laura Delmas. 14.6, technology, Tajay Lee. 14.7, education services report, Sergio Mendez. For the agenda, we have 15.1, request from board members for future agenda items.
That's our request.
I'm good. Mr. Reyes,
I don't have anything.
Mr. Barnes.
Nothing at this time.
16.1, adjourned meeting.
Motion.
Question by Mr. Best, second by Mr. Reyes. Action over here.